haven't you thought resign from the party?
Have I said something that's untrue of him? Yes, I may have offended some people in the party. Definitely would have offended Charlie, or there are one or two leaders that I may not see eye to eye with. Welcome back to the Are We OK podcast, the podcast that talks about public policy and politics in ways that are relevant to you. My name is OKM or Dr. Botak.
I am Mr. Money, Peter. Yeah.
So how's your week been?
Last week was a good time to actually catch up with some podcasts. So I spent some time listening to the podcast by Keluar Sekejap, where Ismail Sabri was interviewed. I realized that ever since he did not take any position as a minister, he kind of just shy away from the limelight, or more like there wasn't enough coverage given to him. There weren't even much acknowledgement about what he has done before. I know, obviously, they're good and bad. There are people who say that like Kyrie was being too nice to him, you know, and stuff like that. But it was good seeing a different side of him. And when he talked about all the topics about the factions that are within, which definitely
within UMNO, yeah.
I would like to hear your opinion on that. But on the other hand also, the way that they have portrayed him was as a leader who was rather humble, as someone who, number one, always take care about the grassroots people, and talking about poor people, literally poor people. Number two is, when he assigns a task to you, he doesn't micromanage, and he really trusts you to do it.
Yep.
And he chooses to give credit to people who work under him rather than taking all the credit for himself. So that was the way that was being portrayed. So I thought of actually asking you, right, these two parts to it. Number one, you had the opportunity to deal with him. Number two is, in your opinion, of those factions that he talked about, like Putrajaya and PWTC. And how does that continuously affect the current landscape in the politics? Because in a way now, PWTC and Putrajaya is kind of like combined into one,
correct.
right?
Yes,
but
correct.
there's still that overflowing faction somewhat there, which wasn't really addressed, I would say.
Two responses. I think the first response is when he was Prime Minister, I think we found it easier to deal with him and his office in the sense that, you know, we got the MOU done, the Confidence and Supply Agreement, and it was because he wanted to stabilize the political situation in the country. He saw that it was a necessary move for the country, for, you know, his own cabinet, and also for the opposition, so that we could come together to focus on rehabilitating the economy, coming out from COVID, and reopening our borders. And also to put in some institutional reform in Parliament, equal allocation of constituency, funding, MA 63, anti-hopping law. So there were a lot of things that were done under his very short tenure as Prime Minister. And that's one of the reasons why, you know, I'm supporting his Larian Keluarga Malaysia, to give him credit for all the things that he did. And I think this Larian Keluarga Malaysia is also a good way, including on KG's podcast, together with Shahril, to highlight some of the things that he did and may not have been properly acknowledged. The second response is that I was definitely aware of the differences between Putrajaya and also PWTC. Not because, you know, I spoke to the UMNO guys a lot, but because we were constantly thinking about when Parliament was going to be dissolved. Because we knew that Zahid and his faction wanted to dissolve Parliament as soon as possible. Whereas for Ismail Sabri and also for the opposition, we wanted to delay it a little bit longer for different reasons. Number one, we felt that the economy was just stabilizing. We're just coming out from COVID. We wanted the budget to be passed and to be implemented. And also, you know, that time we may not have had that high confidence that we could be able to defeat UMNO and Barisan Nasional. So, whereas for Zahid, I think it was very obvious. He wanted to have the election so that he could have a new lease of life, so to speak. Under a new PM, he may find it more favorable in terms of the conditions for him to appeal to have his cases dismissed.
Right.
Which was eventually what happened, right? So now, you're absolutely right to say that there's no PWTC or Putrajaya faction. Is all one, because UMNO has consolidated its power under the president, who is now Deputy Prime Minister. But there's still some people in the leadership in UMNO, and also some people who are out of the leadership in UMNO that are, I think, can be considered as the faction that is not so favorable towards Zahid. Right? So Ismail Sabri would be one of them. Of course, people like KJ who are outside, looking in, would be another. Hishamuddin. And there may be some within the leadership, the Majlis Tertinggi, the UMNO Supreme Council, who are there but not necessarily big fans of Zahid, but cannot come out to say so because he's their president. And he will do things against them if they come out to openly rebel against them.
Right. That's really interesting. Now, today we're going to be pretty much on the topic of leaders for a big part of it. But before we move on to the next leader that we're going to be talking about, they say that every leader have their superpower. Like Mahathir, he has his own superpower. His superpower was pretty much he had an iron claw. He controlled everything and he knows every single thing that was happening, right? Anwar's superpower was probably the fact that, his amazing storytelling ability. What do you think is Ismail Sabri's superpower, if there's a superpower that you will assign to him or you think he's recognized as?
I think his superpower is to remain poker face. So you look at him, right? Like what KJ and Shahril said, you don't really know whether he's happy or sad. He's just there, And I think one of the things that I found surprising in that interview was the fact that he said, actually, why do these people still come and kacau me or speak badly of me,
Yes.
In some of the bahagian or the division meetings, people who are more aligned to the president, I think they use those opportunities to whack him and the previous administration when he was PM, right? So I think that really got to him because people will share with him this kind of information. And I think this is, he has good grounds to be, not happy because he served his party well. He's a party man. Ultimately, the UMNO Supreme Council said that they wanted to dissolve parliament.
Yep.
And he did that. He could have easily gone against the wishes of the Supreme Council. And like what Kari say, try to use his position as PM to go after Zahid. And to have a party elections, trigger a party election so that he could take Zahid head on, and he would have the advantage because he was PM.
Yeah.
Right. So I think his poker face in that kind of situation, was quite interesting for me. Maybe that's his superpower.
Now, if I were to say that he has a superpower, after the episode, my thought was his superpower is that he trusts people. Like he trusts people to get their job done. He trusts that if this is the way things are, it will be reciprocated. If I follow, you won't stab me lah. But I think his superpower also tend to be his problem. Where like one part of it was that he did not take credit for things, and therefore, like every time when a PM did something, everyone will sing and shout praises about it. Remember the works that they've done. But he's one who actually, I thought about it. He actually didn't shout about.
He's not somebody.
Much,
He's not somebody who will sort of like stick his neck out immediately to get some publicity or get some credit.
That's right.
That's not in his nature, lah.
Yeah, but it makes him quite an interesting leader to work with from an outsider perspective. With the little information I have, it sounds like someone who's good to work with, because imagine working with someone who actually just empowers you and get your stuff done, right? In that.
Of course,
general context.
If you know what you want to do, that's very good. But of course, some people will say that maybe one of the reasons why Ismail Sabri lets his cabinet ministers do what they want and not micromanage them is that he himself may not have that good of an idea in terms of how he would have managed the situation differently if he saw some gaps in their leadership.
Two sides of the coin.
Correct.
Two sides of the coin. Since we are on the topic of leaders, and one of the most interesting things that allow us to lead into today's topic is the fact that the Menteri Besar of the Chief Minister of Penang chose to withdraw from contesting, right?
This is Chow Kuan Yew.
Yes, Chow Kuan Yew, and that kind of like surprised me. And now, before we go into further of the juicy details, where we have a lot of questions for you, I believe the audience as well, if there's a superpower of Chow Kuan Yew, what will it be?
Chow's superpower is that he is somebody who is very unfazed about the things that are happening around him. Not so much a poker face, more of the kind of person that people can be saying all sorts of nasty things about him next door. He will sort of like just be able to brush it aside and continue doing the work that he's supposed to do.
Wow.
That's, I think, something that has allowed him to continue into his second term as Chief Minister. That is coming to an end because, we have this cap of 2 terms in Penang as Chief Minister. And he has chosen and publicly announced that he's not going to contest the position of the DAP state chairman in Penang. So before I go into that position and what it entails for DAP in Penang and maybe at the national level. From your perspective as an interested political observer, when you see Chow coming up to make this kind of public announcement, what goes through your head? What do you think? What do you sort of like read into his announcement?
Definitely, I think this particular skill set of mine has improved significantly over the last 8-9 months. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. After doing this podcast,
it's an unusual announcement because firstly, you don't go and announce it out of the blue. And usually it's more prep. So the fact that it's being announced like that is to send a signal to people. And chances are he's sending signal to people that he doesn't have a favorable position with, right? In this case, the likelihood will be...
some of the power brokers in Penang.
Some of the power brokers in Penang. And what he's saying that, hey, leave me alone. I'm not going to play anymore. I'm just not going to contest. So can you just leave me alone?
Okay.
Right. Yeah, so that is how it sounded like. Yeah, that's my suspicion.
So leaving him alone, from your understanding, would also mean leaving him alone to finish up his term as second term as Chief Minister of Penang.
I think there is that signal to actually say, yeah, let me finish my term. After that, I won't kacau you anymore. Yeah, I won't even want to be involved. Just let me finish whatever I need to do. And I guess when subsequently, when we see a lot of responses coming in from other party members, then I guess it kind of confirms that, in my opinion.
I'm going to spend a bit of time on this because I think this is where bringing you behind the curtain is really helpful, given the fact that I know some of the undercurrents that has been happening in DAP, including in DAP Penang, on this particular issue, probably over the past 8 months or so. I have to speak carefully because I have already offended a major power broker and a person of influence in the DAP in another podcast, not this one, in another one, whereby I was told, and again I'm revealing this for the first time, I was told after the comments that I made about this important and influential leader in the DAP, a letter was sent to the disciplinary committee in the DAP asking for actions to be taken against me for what I said. I didn't get a copy of this letter because I think there were people who were advocating for me and who said that it would be better not for this kind of disciplinary hearing to be undertaken against me. I think there's also other related reasons because, again, just to sort of like get a sense of what knowledge and the political exposure that you've accumulated over the time that we're doing this podcast, right?
Or the behind the scenes,
Yeah. Imagine, let's say this particular leader, that letter was sent to the disciplinary committee and the disciplinary committee decided to send a letter to me saying that I needed to go and attend a disciplinary committee hearing to answer to the accusations that have been leveled against me by this influential DAP leader. If that happened, and if let's say I were to make this disciplinary committee or DC hearing something that's public, meaning I put on social media that, I'm going to have this DC hearing because of certain things I said, what do you think would be the public reaction?
I think it would defeat the purpose of the name because it's a DAP, Democratic Action Party, right? Yeah, so it doesn't look very democratic.
Okay. Do you think the public will be more supportive of me or less supportive of me on this particular issue?
I think the nature of your current position right now, because you're not involved in, you're pretty much...
Free agent.
You're free agent, right? I mean, aside of you being a party man, people are more in support of your opinions because you can give a very neutral opinion at this point.
I'm not trying to advocate for something out of own self-interest, right? So that's why it's very important, I think, for me to be careful, in terms of what I say. Not just so that I don't get in trouble, but more importantly, and this is something that maybe the audience would not realize, right? Whatever I say can be not only used against me, but used against the people in the DAP who are seen to be close to me.
Oh.
What do I mean by this? Meaning, I'm going to tell you guys now, what I know of some of these challenges that Chow has been facing in Penang, right? And obviously this would make people think of certain DAP leaders in certain ways. Okay,
you want to give this person a name or not? Like when I don't think you are interested in pointing out any names.
Yes.
Let's give this person Charlie.
Charlie.
Okay.
This person Charlie may use this interview this podcast to say that now anyone who is seen to be associated with Kian Ming is against me, which means that if there are any party elections that's happening at the state level, or more importantly at the national level, I will not give you my votes. Right? So even if, let's say, that's why when I talk about the succession issue in Penang, right, I'm very careful in terms of the names I may or may not name. Because there are certain names that I may name. If let's say I name that name, that one, meaning Kian Ming is supporting that person. Then that person will get dragged down by me mentioning that person.
Jalat, no wonder so hard for us to get guests.
Correct. No, I mean, I think there are some who will still come. And I haven't really tried that hard lah. Because
I mean, let's be honest, even KJ side, also very hard to get the UMNO guys.
Yes, correct. So similar rationale lah, right?
Yeah.
Except that I think for in the case of UMNO, he's been sacked from the party.
That's right.
In my case, I'm still a party member, right? And I'm still a state committee member, which for Selangor, which I'll come to that a bit later. So having set that context, I will be able to share with you guys the following. This is something that is an open secret already in Penang, which is probably since 2020, after the Sheraton move, there have been very obvious efforts led by Charlie. By Charlie, to undermine the authority and the leadership of Chow Kuan Yew in Penang as the chief minister. I won't go into the details, but some of this is actually available on social media, and it is something that the reporters know in Penang. The people who are in the chattering classes, the coffee shop uncles and aunties who talk about politics, they all know this tension within the DAP.
Between Charlie and Chow.
Charlie and Chow.
Charlie and Chow.
Right, so as a result of this, there was an active effort before the state elections in Penang last year to replace Chow as chief minister.
Yes.
This was also reported in some circles, and ultimately it was not successful because there wasn't an obvious candidate that could be proposed that had the support of leaders at the national and also at the state level. Chow continued to be the chief minister with the support of DAP Secretary General Anthony Loke. And it's very instructive that soon after Chow announced that he wasn't going to contest to remain as DAP state chairman in Penang, Anthony Loke came out with a statement to say that Chow will continue to be chief minister until the next general election. That means let him finish out his term. Leave him alone lah. Don't kacau him lah.
Don't kacau him. Yeah.
Right? So I think the reason why I bring this up is because Chow knows that he does not have enough votes within whoever is going to be the state committee because of the influence of Charlie for him to remain as Penang state chairman.
Right.
So rather than go in there and then face that embarrassment, he did the gentlemanly thing. Right. I'm not going to contest, and pave the way for somebody else to take over as state chairman. Right. And then maybe this person would be a front runner to take over as Penang chief minister after the next elections.
I see. So maybe you can take us behind the curtains this time round, right? Yeah, we have been hearing about Charlie and Chow. And so number one, what's the problem with Charlie and Chow? Like, why did they even become like enemy in the first place? Or like, what is Charlie's grudge against Chow?
I think there's a clash of leadership styles lah.
Right.
Because Charlie, by nature, is much more aggressive, go-getter, wanting to do things fast, which served him well in the past in other leadership positions lah. And Chow, his way of doing things is much more reserved, much slower, not so dynamic, but more consensual, not so aggressive in a way that would cause a lot of people discomfort lah. Right, so both have their pros and cons lah. But given the fact that Chow is now the chief minister and he has been given the mandate by the party to continue until the next state elections, I think no matter what your disagreement or unhappiness with his leadership style, if you are within the party, you should support him lah. Party man, right?
Let him do his job lah.
Yes, correct. So don't go and undermine him, things like that lah.
Right.
And it really, I think, affects the operations of the state government because many of the excos, especially from those in the party, feels conflicted. On the one hand, they have to support their chief minister, who is Chow, because they are part of the same government. On the other hand, you have an influential person, Charlie, who is telling them, you cannot come out to support Chow for
That's right.
this and that because I don't like the way he's doing things.
Right. So here's what I want to ask you, right? We kind of read all this on newspaper, but we don't really understand how does it go behind the scenes. And for me, if I were to put myself in that situation, I think it's a very difficult situation, like you say, because you're supposed to work together so that, you can get stuff done, right?
Correct.
But on the other hand, if you're going to work together, you are also being forced to take sides suddenly, right? And in this kind of position, I think it's very hard to stay neutral as well, right? Because if you're neutral, you're making a decision in that sense, depending on how aggressive Charlie or Chow is, So what are some of the tactics that tend to happen? Like, why can't just leave it alone? And if don't leave him alone, what are some of the things that tend to happen there that can undermine Chow's work?
If let's say, for the sake of argument, you say, okay, leave Chow alone. Some people within the power structure in Penang would say, if you leave Chow alone, a lot of things won't get done. They will get done in a way that's much slower.
Not my way, basically.
Yes. Or even if, let's say, you don't think that Charlie's way is the most, suitable, there can be a middle ground where you can say, actually, I think Chow can do more. Right? So that's one way of looking at things. But on the other hand, some people who are maybe supporters of Chow would say, actually, he may be slow, but he's quite methodical. And if you look at some of the FDI numbers that have come in, if you look at the progress made on the LRT project that's going to be, construction is going to start soon in Penang. There are, and the sort of like reclamation of the island, approval has been finally given. So, he has managed to get these projects started or will start soon. So there's a method in his slowness, right? So he does get things done, and he has a mandate for 5 years, right? So that would be maybe his legacy. And I think there are both pros and cons. I know both of these individuals well, having worked with them in different capacities, and I think both of them have their own
different style.
Just different style. But as party man, you support whoever is the leader, right?
So then the question is this, right? How does this affect the future of DAP itself? Because then suddenly there's this whole idea. I mean, I'm not involved in politics. I'm only involved in career and corporates, right? So how do you actually advance when you know that it's kind of like the CEO keep coming all the way down to meddle with the supervisor's work, right? They tell the supervisor, hey, why you arrange a schedule like this? And you're like 10 steps away, Like, can you just let me arrange my schedule myself?
Actually, in terms of, a corporate setting, it is not the CEO. In this case, it is the chairman that's coming to...
even further. Correct.
Even further. Correct. Yeah.
So you're not even in execution, right? You suddenly come in and you talk so much. I mean, not to say that to disrespect your ability or your experience, but it does pose some sort of difficulty in growth.
Causes a lot of difficulties in many things, succession planning, running the government, the kind of people that you want to bring into the party to grow the party, right? Because suddenly, it's like, one way is like my way or the highway kind of thing, right? Yeah, but I think before I go into that, let's take a short break because I want to explain a little bit more about how the DAP state elections work. And this will be used as a starting point to explain how Chow's successor as DAP state chairman may be will be selected, and also implications for DAP in Penang and also perhaps at the national level, right?
All right.
So we'll be right back after this. Welcome back to the Are We OK podcast, and we are hitting on the very spicy topic of this week, which is Chief Minister of Penang, Chow Kuan Yew's decision not to seek re-election as DAP State Chairman, a position that he has held for 25 years. So just to give you an idea, and also to the audience who may not know, DAP has quite a unique election system, unlike, let's say, PKR or UMNO, whereby we have elections to the state committee in each of the states that DAP has operations in. And just to give you sort of like a contrast, there are state chiefs for UMNO, for PKR, but these are appointed by the president of PKR, the president of UMNO.
Right.
So that's why the president of UMNO and PKR, in a way, is actually much more powerful, because the state heads does have quite a lot of power in terms of representing the party at the state level. Whereas for DAP, we have elections to go into the state committee, right? So in each state, you have 15 people who are elected into the state committee.
Okay.
And out of the 15 people, they will have to come up with who will be their chairman.
Oh, okay.
So they elect. So 15 people, I've heard of situations whereby the chairman position came down to a vote between 8 and 7. 8 people voted for one person, 7 voted for another.
Wow.
So it's actually quite close one. On the most part, there's usually consensus lah. Usually it will be 15-0, 14-1, supporting one obvious candidate, because all this has been pre-arranged and planned lah. So when Chow is saying that he's not contesting for the position of DAP state chairman, right? He is saying that he's not contesting for a position in the DAP state committee, as far as I understand.
Oh.
Right? Because if he's in the DAP state committee, somebody proposes him as chairman, he doesn't get it, then it will be quite embarrassing. Again, I may be wrong in this, depending on how Chow decides. But the cleanest way for him to do this would be similar to what Kit Siang did. It's like, oh, don't even vote for me for CEC. I don't want to be in the CEC. Right? For Chow, it will be, I'm not even going to allow myself to be nominated as a candidate for the state committee.
Right.
Right. So this means that there will be 15 people that doesn't include Chow in the state committee, and they will have to pick a new chairman. Obviously, most of the people that will be selected into the state committee will have to have some votes from the branches that Mr. Charlie controls, because he and his allies controls a majority of the branches in DAP in Penang, which will cast votes for the state committee.
So in a way, while it's a vote, but there's quite a lot of pre-arrangement.
Yes. There's Saitan, there's menu. You more or less can guess who is going to get in the top 10, maybe the last 5.
Then what's the point of voting?
Sure. What's that?
What's the point of voting?
Well, I mean, there are some uncertainties that can materialize, especially with regards to position 11 to 15. And if let's say the balance of power is quite close, like I say 8 to 7, right? Then your 11 to 15 becomes very important.
So it's really like our democracy that lah. Like Malaysia democracy, it's most country democracy lah.
It's a negotiated democracy lah, which I think is not necessarily bad, because
most country operate that way anyway.
Well, I mean, you want to have a situation where the chairman who is selected has more or less consensus support among all the state committee members lah. Right? So I think now with Chow deciding not to contest, what this means is that whoever is going to be put in as state chairman will be seen as a very strong candidate to be the next chief minister. Obviously, when people make this kind of calculation, they will also think that, oh, I'm sure Charlie, being the influential person he is, would want to put a candidate in as state chairman, maybe not himself, but somebody he likes, somebody that he trusts lah.
Right? Somebody he trusts.
Could be a family member, could be somebody in his inner circle. But there may be others that think that, hey, just because this person is somebody that Charlie trusts, that person may not be the most suitable to be the next chief minister, because it is not necessarily by merit lah.
The last point very important,
So I think this is part and parcel of the challenge that DAP is facing now, because you also have to remember, when this person is nominated, or this person becomes the DAP state chairman, with the idea that this person can take over Chow as chief minister, the public in Penang will have their own views about this. Just because the party has picked this person doesn't mean that the general public feels that that person is qualified. And this was the mistake that Gerakan made when they were having a transition from Kosukun to the next chief minister. They thought that because Gerakan was the most important party in Penang, whoever they choose would sort of like get the support of the public. But what happened was, as they were fighting among themselves in terms of who is going to replace Kosukun, 2008 general elections happened, and Gerakan was out of power in Penang. I'm not saying that DAP will face the same fate in Penang anytime soon. There's a lack of credible opposition. I think Gerakan is very, very far away from being able to...
It's not the same Gerakan as it used to be.
Right. So I think DAP still has that kind of time and space. But the longer this kind of attitude goes on to say that, look, just because I control DAP Penang, or the majority of votes, branches, and also state committee members, I can dictate who I want to put as state chairman and also anoint that person to be the next chief minister, and that person will automatically get the support of the public. I think that is very dangerous thinking. Because it really turns a sort of like a blind eye to what the people on the ground are saying.
Right.
Especially with regards to this dispute within the DAP between Charlie and Chow. Right? The people in Penang, I can tell you, although I'm not a Penangite, I talk to many people, they may not be so happy with the current situation.
Right. This reminds me of a guy who used to be our PM and left and then eventually decided to come back, but not relevant enough and started his own party. In the end, losing his own seat as well.
In Langkawi,
right? Yeah. So it kind of like over a long run, it kind of like reminds me of that, right?
I think it's from a desire, maybe similar to Tun M, to want to remain politically relevant and to be in a position of power to be able to dictate certain political outcomes. Because as a politician, these are things that matter to you, or at least to some people. You get intoxicated by the ability to influence through the power that you hold.
Right.
And in this case, it's the power that you hold in the party.
Right.
So, okay, any other questions that you want to ask about the situation in Penang before I say something a little bit more personal about my own position in DAP Selangor?
My personal take, finally, is that I just don't think it's very good. These kind of things are the kind of things that me as a person, if ever I consider joining politics, makes me feel that I don't really want to be a part of it. And it's because it makes politics really politics, right? Not for nation building purposes.
Not for the people, but more for your own power.
But more for the own power. And I think going back to the idea of power, I think sometimes the best power is to not exercise power.
Or to hand the power over to somebody else.
That's a wisdom, I think. So not easy, but I think that's something that every leader needs to learn.
Okay, so, to come back to myself and to sort of like give a bit of context as well to DAP state elections that's happening in the next couple of months. Each state will have their own elections. The Penang one is the one that's probably the most heated because of the disagreement between Charlie and Chow. In the case of Selangor, I'm actually still a member of the state committee in Selangor. Yeah, I was elected. I wasn't co-opted or appointed. In the elections 3 years ago. There was some thought in my head on whether I should stand again to be still a state leader.
So will you?
My initial thought was that I would continue to stand, because I think there is value in having somebody who is not an MP or ADUN to be in the state committee. And I think I have certain experiences and certain networks and knowledge that can be helpful to DAP at the state level. And again, this is where it becomes a little bit tricky, because there's pull factors and there's push factors. The pull factors are some of the factors that made me make the decision to not contest again in Bangi. Meaning, I wanted some personal time. I was a bit tired, burnt out. And right now, I'm quite busy in my academic work at Taylor's and also some of my other engagements with industry, the corporate sector, other academic institutions. So those are the pull factors that says, actually, let me draw a chapter, at least for now, in terms of my active involvement in politics, to a close and focus on other things.
Right.
But there are also push factors. The push factors that led me not to contest in Bangi included some disagreements with some particular leaders in the DAP.
Including Charlie?
Including Charlie.
Oh, okay.
That made me not want to put myself in that kind of a position. And similarly, these are the push factors that will also lead me not to contest for the DAP Selangor State Committee elections. And going back to what I said earlier about how my statements and how my, even this podcast, what I'm saying now, can be used not just against me, but against some of my friends in the DAP. Right? The push factor would be, and this is something that your audience may not be aware of, and even Peter, you may not be aware of, right? If I decide to contest, I would be putting some of my colleagues in Selangor in a difficult position. Because I think I have enough goodwill and support among many of the leaders in Selangor and the branch people that I probably would still be able to get into the top 15. But there will be others in Selangor and even from other states, for the sake of argument, let's say Charlie, that would instigate for leaders in Selangor not to vote for me.
Right.
And that would put them in a difficult position. Because a leader like Charlie may say, hey, if you support Kian Ming, if you do not ask your branches not to support him for the DAP State Committee elections, I will withdraw support for you at the National CEC elections, which will take place in 2025. So rather than put my colleagues in this kind of difficult position, right, where they have to consider between their friendship with me and also their political future in DAP Selangor and at the national level, I have decided that I will not contest in the upcoming DAP Selangor State Committee elections. So because of the pull factors and also because of these push factors.
So you won't be... Oh, this is an announcement, right?
This is an announcement, yes. Yeah. It's not as big as what Chow announced, because right now I'm not a minister, deputy minister, not even an MP.
But you are taking another step further lah.
Yes, I'm taking
another step
even
further.
Another step back. This means that I will not have any elected positions in the party. I'm just a normal member. I'm not even a branch chairman anymore. I've given up that position to somebody else.
Wow.
So that I can be a normal member and be able to and a podcaster and say things in a relatively open way. And also that also allows me a bit more freedom to engage with industry, with corporates in ways that will not put me in the politically exposed persons category.
Right. So now that you made this announcement, right, it's the first time I'm hearing this. I think it's good that if you allow me to ask you some follow-up questions, right? And feel free to answer as you feel comfortable, right? Firstly, when you looked at the Penang situation, did it kind of contributed to this decision that you're making?
No. Because I knew that the situation in Penang with regards to the DAP State Committee elections would turn out this way.
Right.
Even from the beginning of this year.
Right.
Because I knew, I know the personality of the characters
undercurrent that's happening lah. So secondly, right, when you received that letter, or either you were told about that letter.
I was told about that letter.
You were told rumors of that letter lah.
Yes.
That would be more correct, right? Rumors of that letter. How did you feel about it? Does it make you wonder, or does it scare you?
I think it made me much more careful and concerned. Meaning, not so much for myself. Like I said, if let's say push comes to shove, the disciplinary committee decides to recommend that I be sacked from the party because of certain things that I say. And even now, what I'm saying now, somebody, Charlie or one of his people that he's close to may send a letter to the the disciplinary committee again and ask for me to answer to these disciplinary actions. And if let's say they sack me from the party, I'll be sad, but it's okay. Life goes on, right? I don't have any elected positions, right? Especially since I'm not going to contest in the DAP State Committee, But what really I think made me more concerned is I don't want whatever actions I take or the things I say to be used against people that I'm still close to in the party. And these are people that I think serve the party well, serve the country well. They have the interests of people at heart. That is the part that made me more careful and concerned. And I also know, even the way we are talking about this particular issue, there may be a legal case that may be taken up against me. And if I were to be frank, the other part of me actually felt that, if let's say this were to be made public, right, I don't mind. Meaning, then, more of the public can see some of the things I already know in my own heart through the observations I made. Over one small comment that I made in a relatively obscure podcast can be used allegedly in this letter that was sent to try to get me in trouble within the party. Right? So if let's say more people could understand this, that may be better in terms of understanding the potential direction that the party may take going down the road.
Right.
And this would have consequences not just for the party but for national politics and the future of DAP's role in government.
One more question is this. Your friend, Kyrie, literally keluar sekejap, and that kind of served him quite well. Right? Because he doesn't need to toe the party line anymore. He just freely say whatever he wants to say. I'm pretty sure that there were efforts to kind of single him out and, try to make you feel lonely lah by whoever associate or even talk to him. Hey, you didn't met him. I'm sure got this kind of stuff. And for you, doing this podcast with you for so long, I know that very often there are a lot of things that you also try not to say because ultimately you're still a party man. Haven't you thought of if you just resign from the party, that would give you a lot more space to, say whatever you need to say or contribute in a different manner in this different season in your life? Now, I'm not instigating for you to resign, please. But it's really a genuine question, right? Because you are no more holding any position, and I can see that you also don't want to trouble the people, nor do you want to, and by giving advice to those who used to work with you or your previous colleagues, I mean, those can be done over a cup of coffee. It doesn't need a party identity. So did that ever cross your mind? Okay,
so a few responses lah. I think I'm quite glad to say that the people that I consider friends in the party still regard me as friends, as a friend. And if I give inputs, if I want to talk to them about certain policy issues that I care about, they will still listen to me. At least give me a bit of time of the day. So that's one thing that I wanted to make clear. And that kind of relationship will continue, even if, let's say, I'm no longer a party member. Second thing is, I don't think it would have been responsible for me to even step down from my position as treasurer of DAP Selangor, because that's the position I currently hold. Because that was the responsibility I was given. I will carry out that responsibility until the end of my term, which is coming up in October this year. Right. So the sense of responsibility I have makes me want to carry out those responsibilities until the end. Just like how I announced my decision not to contest in Bangi in May 2022, 1 year before expiration of Parliament. After I made the announcement, I still continued to carry out my duties as MP.
Yep.
I nominated Charizan to be my representative at the constituency level, so he has local stand-by to go around and mix around and meet people, and that was done with the blessing of the party leadership because it was a suitable seat for him, and I knew that as well. So that's the second response. To be responsible as a responsible party leader, I need to carry out my duties until the end of my term. And third response to that would be, why should I resign? I haven't done anything wrong. Right? Have I done something wrong that is against the spirit and also the constitution of the party? Yes, I may have offended some people in the party. Definitely would have offended Charlie. Right? But have I said something that's untrue of him? Have I said something, whether it's personal or whether it's in public? In public, I don't really say that much, right? Except for that one podcast. I haven't done anything wrong. So why should I resign? Resigning almost seems that I've done something wrong.
Right.
And also that I've given up on the ideals of the party, which I haven't. So I don't think I should resign from the party for selfish reasons or because there are one or two leaders that I may not see eye to eye with.
Right.
Yeah, so, just let things, happen naturally. And if, let's say, the party later on feels that I have a role to play in the future, wherever that future may be, I'm open to have that discussion. Maybe that prospect is not very high as long as there are certain influential people in the party that would not want me to play a more prominent role in the party, including standing for elections again. Right? But I've never closed that door. I'm open to it if the conditions are right. And the conditions have to be right for me as well as the party leadership. If the party leadership thinks that, it's fine, the party is in a strong enough position, there are a lot of young talents that can do a better job than me, I'll be very, very happy. Then I can go and do the things that I enjoy doing, like my academic stuff, my industry and corporate engagements and things like that. But I still feel called for public service, and I think I have certain qualities that makes me suitable for certain roles in government. So if, let's say, those opportunities come by, and the party feels that I'm qualified, I'm open to it. So I hope that answers your question.
Yep. I think I just want to wrap up this part here a little bit with my own thoughts, right? Feel free to add on. But knowing you for the past 9 months, having conversation with you, a lot of people will definitely say, as a politician, you cheat you, right? Like what you say, don't be careful, may not be true. But one thing I do see a consistency in is you actually have certain ideals that you stand to. It's not like you are seeing the political career as a career per se. Like I've not really seen you talk about it like, it's a career.
Yeah.
It is rather more of an opportunity. If everything is right, you can do something. And that one of the parts that I do see that for you is important is it has to follow certain ideals that you believe in, certain principles that you are willing to stand on. And it's not like you're not practical, as in like you are totally idealistic. You know that certain idealism may not survive under certain condition. And then you will be the kind that asks yourself, are you okay with that? If you're not, then you're just, okay, see you, bye.
Look for other pathways.
Yeah. So I have to say that this is rather very consistent of you. And it's fun because you don't really have that vibe where like it's about a political career. But rather it's almost like a game, It's almost like a place where you can just exercise your mind and...
Sure. Yeah, so I'm lucky in the sense that I have other options, right? But let me just wrap up with this, because I do feel that we need good people in politics, including people who knows how to play the political game so that they can go up the political career path to be able to serve the people better. We need those people. They may not necessarily be totally honest with you or their supporters or whoever, but generally there are certain ideas and principles that they try to hold on to. My concern is this. If let's say the episode in Penang repeats itself in DAP at the national level, where people feel they have to kowtow to certain personalities and even sacrifice their own principles in order to play that political game, that is the beginning of the end for the DAP when it comes to, number one, being able to stand by your principles. Number two, being able to attract good people to come into the party and to serve the party. And number three, the kind of spirit of camaraderie in terms of reaching certain objectives that are good for the people. And it will turn into a situation where it's every man and woman for himself or herself. So that is the danger. I hope that won't happen in the near future, but I've seen it happen in other political parties. Some of those parties are in the current government. So let this serve as a warning to my friends in the DAP. And I hope that the people who are also listening to this, who are supporters of the DAP, can also communicate these concerns to your friends who are in the party. So wrap this session up.
All right.
Be right back. Hey guys, welcome back to the final segment of this Are We OK podcast. And we're going to quickly go through three policy-related issues, starting with the situation with Malaysian Airlines, going through some challenging times with, this cancellation of flights, accusations that people saying that a lot of their maintenance, repair and operation staff or MRO staff have left. So just right off the bat, have you taken any mass flights recently or MAG flights recently?
Yes, early of the year, I believe. Yeah.
Well, any delays or any problems?
No, quite okay. I took Firefly and then I took mass. Last year, I took mass to Sabah. Then early of the year, last year and early of this year as well, I also took Firefly. Oh, quite good, no problem. Yeah, quite good.
I think...
Not the most beautiful, but I have to say I've complained for Firefly. The plane is super stuffy.
Okay.
Super stuffy, man.
So this one is from Subang lah.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. I've not taken mass flights recently, not because I don't want to, but there have been other, more other options. And my sense is that maybe the short haul flights are still okay because the frequency of these flights are higher. They need to make sure that the MRO capabilities for some of these planes are there. But my sense is that some of the longer haul flights, the one to I think if I'm not mistaken, to London. Via Abu Dhabi, and then another one that was recalled back was the one to Seoul, Incheon, if I'm not mistaken. Right, so this may have to do something to do with A330s, the Airbus, where some of the MRO capabilities may have been lacking. So that's one. I think the other thing that I wanted to highlight was somehow the sort of like blame for some of these operational issues, has shifted from MAS, because ultimately they are the ones that are responsible for this, right, to allegations that Another company in the MRO ecosystem, which is called SIA Engineering Corporation or SIAEC, has come and poached a number of staff from the MAS operations to work at their new MRO facility in Subang. And the hangars of this particular facility was leased out by a subsidiary of Khazanah. Right? So some of the people are saying, actually, you shouldn't have gotten, or allowed SIAEC to operate in Subang. Khazanah shouldn't have rented out the hangars to them. Because this would have been the inevitable consequence where they would offer higher pay and poach these staff from MAS or maybe other airlines also, domestic airlines or Malaysian carriers to this new entity. What do you think about that?
That's a very weird mentality lah. I thought on one hand we would like Malaysians to earn more. On the other hand also we would like more knowledge transfer and more competition to increase our competitiveness. But on the other hand, when it takes a while for us to catch up, we are complaining that there's competition. So that's a very weird mentality. It's like you want to, we are going to train, let's say we send our athletes to train with the best. And then when we go and train with the best, our athletes are not performing as good as they are training in Malaysia with other players. Then you complain and say, maybe we shouldn't send our athlete to train with the best. We should just train in Malaysia and then one day we go Olympic.
Okay.
That's not a very smart move in my opinion.
Okay. And I think, the other thing that I need to highlight is, for this particular company, SIAEC, they actually have MRO operations in the Philippines already. Of course, in Changi, their home base, they have limited hangars, and I've actually visited their facility when I was deputy minister. They have 2 or 3 hangars only, if I'm not mistaken. So they have to do the MROs for many of their customers, in outside Singapore, in a place like the Philippines. So by bringing in SIAEC to Subang, it means that you can bring in more MRO activities to Subang, and that can be part and parcel of the strategy that has been announced by Selangor with support of the federal government to make the Subang airport area into an aerospace hub. Right? So if let's say we want to use that kind of mentality, right, we should not allow Boeing or Airbus suppliers to come in as well. Because they may poach some of our engineering staff. Right? So then we shouldn't even allow other carriers to come in because other carriers will compete against MAS.
That sounds like the whole how Proton became Proton case, right? And how cars become so expensive in Malaysia, right?
And that's an interesting example that you brought up, because Proton had managed to turn itself around because they invited a foreign entity called Geely to come and invest in them. Bringing in the X70 as sort of like changing the mentality that people have. And I drive an X70. It served me well over 5 years, right? So, for this SIAEC, MAS, MRO operations kind of thing, I think, some of the people that I've seen reacting to this, they're trying to score certain political points. And not really looking at the larger long-term policy, space in this area.
I want to ask you this thing, right? Because I realize that whenever we touch the subject of airlines, right, it gets a bit touchy sometimes, because somehow airlines is almost an equivalent to a national pride in that sense. It's like having an airline means that, oh, your country very good, but the truth is that when the airline may not be doing very well, right, maybe be logical a bit. I'm not saying what, but maybe work together with other players more to enhance the capability. Like in corporate, right? When certain things we know that we are not very good at, we outsource. But pride kind of gets into the way because it's a national pride thing suddenly. So what's up with airlines that it becomes so touchy?
It is a national carrier, carries the flag of the country. And each country must, the governments of each country, for various reasons, think that they must have at least one airline that they can call their national carrier. Some countries have more than one airline. And I think for us, in Malaysia, you probably could argue that in terms of carrying the Malaysian brand name, we actually have 2.
Asia does quite well.
And also Malaysian Airlines Group, or MAS. MAS, of course, is a full service carrier. AirAsia is a budget carrier, so they occupy different segments of the market. But of course, AirAsia also takes away a lot of business from MAS, especially as AirAsia has grown. Of course, it also encourages more people to travel because the prices are lower. So there's this emotional attachment to the national carrier. But I think what is really important that that the government must also be aware of is you want the national carrier not just for the sake of having a national carrier. You want the carrier to be able to bring about value-added economic activity, network connectivity, bringing people from different parts of the world coming to Malaysia in a way that can spur greater travel, tourism, business, investments and things like that. So I think from that perspective, MAS has not really done that good of a job. In fact, its coverage in terms of its network has shrunk over time because it has not been able to make money through its network, right? So those issues are not really easily solvable. Different people have come in to do different things. Idris Jala came in to do certain things. His white asset unbundling initiative in MAS, trying to improve its operational efficiency, and then there have been subsequent others that have come in. Khazanah, of course, is the main shareholder now. And it's quite interesting to note that Prime Minister Anwar, at a recent gathering celebrating the 30th anniversary of Khazanah, actually mentioned that MAS is saddled with a lot of legacy issues that has got to do with cronies in the past. Right? So I think that's probably a little bit oversimplistic. There's other management-related issues. There may be certain inefficiencies there that has got to do with certain supplies of food, for example, taken from certain contractors that may have been artificially inflated. But yeah, I mean, it's not easy running an airline these days.
It's tough.
Yes, and my sense is that this is another sort of like indicator that MAS management has dropped the ball. Right? Instead of putting the blame on others, I think the MAS management needs to take a good hard look at themselves. And this is not the first time. We talk about MRO this time, but I'm not sure whether you remember when they decided to change the caterer from Brahmin to something else. People were complaining that their nasi lemak didn't have eggs for a long time.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So that is something that you could have anticipated, right? Your supply chain issues. Similarly, if let's say you know that your staff is going to resign, go to another MRO company or go overseas, you should have some plans to go and hire people to replace them in the short term. And then long term, come up with certain policies together with the government and even maybe with some of the other national carriers to try to train more people in the engineering and also the technical services side. Right? So that is the kind of longer term planning that I think we need in the country, rather than a lot of this reactive knee-jerk kind of statements that come out from the mouths of certain politicians.
I think it's not easy. Huh?
Quickly to this other topic called SG4. When you heard this SG4, and I'll explain what it means later, what was your initial impression in terms of what SG4 stands for?
At first I thought, what's Singapore for?
SG4, right?
SG4, right? Is it a VC fund or something like that? Yeah.
So it's not Singapore for, it's actually state government for, which is a fund or some sort of investment vehicle, a company, a private company where the 4 state governments that are controlled by Perikatan Nasional, actually more specifically PAS, namely Perlis, Kedah, Terengganu and Kelantan, they're going to come out with some money, we don't know how much, and they're going to use these resources to invest in certain sectors of the economy. Some announcements were made, but we're still not quite sure. I think renewable is one of them. And Tun Mahathir is the patron or the leader of this initiative. So when I heard about this, right, some of the funny stuff from an optics perspective, right, doesn't really look so nice to me. Firstly, this is an initiative led by the 4 PN states.
Yep.
They are supposed to mematabatkan bahasa kebangsaan, but they call the company SG4, State Government 4. I mean, they could have called it something like Kerajaan Negeri 4, KN4, or maybe KN, Kerajaan Negeri Perikatan Nasional, KNPN4, not PN17. That's one. Second thing is, SG4, like you say, people look at it and say Singapore. But, PAS, PN, many of their leaders would often use Singapore as the bogeyman.
Yes.
To say that, this one is helping Singapore, blah, 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 that kind of stuff. But they go and call themselves SG4.
That's right.
The third optics problem to me, right, is when you are not able to present a leader within the ranks of PN and you rely on the former two-time Prime Minister, who is almost 100 years old, to be the sort of like face of this initiative.
The word initiative kind of implies that there's innovation and newness, you see. Yeah, so when Tun M was the leader of that, it kind of doesn't jive very well lah. Because at this point, his reputation in the market is not really synonymous with relevant, new...
With innovation, with progress, with technology.
Yeah, I mean, he's a good advisor to be on board, but...
Not to be the face of this initiative,
not
right?
Not to be the face lah. And quite clearly in the marketing end, the way they name it and all, a bit interesting lah.
Not very well thought out lah.
Yeah, I would say that lah.
I think, of course, we want to wait to see the results and the details and all that lah. But just from an initial optics standpoint, there's a lot of things that are...
It also tells you one thing, you know. For me lah, in my perspective, when I look at this, right, you can't find someone better within your party, meh?
Yeah.
Then like, if you can't find, it also tells me what, you know, you don't even have the confidence in talents in your own party to manage money, you know.
Yes.
And you're talking about
wanting to run the country.
Run the country, you know. Like, you sure?
Yes. Aren't you able to use your, the fact that you run 4 state governments to be able to recruit maybe some high-profile corporate people to come and lead the initiative?
Or, I mean, even someone who's from the whatever used to run the state government.
Yeah, they have an ex-prime minister in Muhyiddin.
Yeah.
Maybe now not so popular among certain quarters, right? They have a former Menteri Besar of Selangor, Azmin Ali, there as well, right? So it's not as if they have a few qualified ministers and whatnot, right? So none of them were featured, that they don't have like a board that advises them, with a mix of corporate as well as, experienced politicians. So the whole thing really seemed to me as something that was not very well thought out and also not very planned, from a optics perspective.
Yeah,
even from a governance, from an innovation perspective. So I just wanted to highlight it here because it kind of looked funny to me right from the start. Last topic that we're going to talk about is some of the terms and conditions that the government has put forth for the opposition to consider in terms of getting access to constituency allocation. So the full terms and conditions have not been announced yet, but some of it includes, for example, wanting the opposition to support the government. I'm not sure what that entails. Does it mean that you can't vote against the budget? Does this mean that you have to vote for all of the government bills? Even under the MOU that was signed with Ismail Sabri, this was the condition of the MOU was that we would support the passing of the budget and some of the major legislations that the government would pass. But in terms of individual bills, we would still be free to vote our conscience and vote according to party direction. So all this still not very clear to me, and I think the opposition has also brought this out to the public to say that they are considering. Then Fahmi, the Minister of Communications, came back to say that this wasn't done in good faith because they put all these things up in public. They should have negotiated in a more deliberative manner. And my sense is that both sides are playing politics. Both sides are not really very sincere in wanting to have an outcome that can really benefit the people. Because if I go back again to the CSA or the MOU, when Muhyiddin announced the CSA as one of his final acts before resigning as Prime Minister, he made it public. He said, these are the 6 things that I'm putting to you, to the opposition, for you to agree on. And then when Ismail Sabri wanted to sign the MOU, the initial rubric was copied from the CSA that Muhyiddin proposed with some amendments, and even the discussion of what those details were was also relatively public. Of course, I was more aware of it than most, but the journalists knew more or less what was on the table. Right? So I think there's nothing wrong with trying to make these details known in the public. But of course, I think when it comes to the negotiation of the nitty-gritty, you should go in a private setting to go and discuss those things. Right? So it will be interesting to see how both sides continue to try to make this issue and play it along political lines.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts? It's been a pretty heavy episode.
Yeah. Regarding that, I think it's about time to really fulfill the promise of equal allocation to opposition. Again, like what you say, terms and condition and all. I feel like if it's not a sincere move, it's memang set out in such a way that you will reject, so that I can at least say that I've offered, then I feel like you should have done it earlier. It's a little bit too late for that. Like right now, the expectation is you are sincere. But if let's say earlier, it could have been still played around with. So I just don't think it's a very good political move. It's not sincere. It's going to look very bad, in my opinion.
Yeah. And maybe just finally, I think if the government is really sincere, they should institutionalize it, meaning they pass a parliamentary allocation bill whereby it is stated that this is the amount of allocation that all MPs will get, regardless of whether they are government or opposition. And that will protect even the government of the day, because they may end up being in opposition one day. I don't see that happening anytime soon. It's still sort of like a political gamesmanship. And I'm glad that organizations such as Ideas and have advocated for this kind of legislation to be passed. One of the final acts, or one of the final press statements made by Tricia Yeo, who is the outgoing CEO of Ideas, and published in different places, basically emphasized this point. We need to advocate for more consistency in this area. And I hope that one day in the near future, we'll be able to see this kind of institutionalization happen for the benefit of MPs and, more importantly, the larger Malaysian public.
Yep.
All right. Thanks for all your support. And we'll see you in the next episode, where we're going to talk about more interesting policies and politics that may or may not involve Charlie and Chow. See you soon.
See you.